Network intelligence, I started in 2001, so it's been about 11 years in the field of information security. I also run a training company called Institute of Information Security. As you can see, I love to talk, so I have presented at a large number of conferences. I'm a co-author of 2 books. One was by ISACA. They asked me to write a book on Linux security and controls way back in the day, and so on and so forth. So we'll skip the marketing, and here is where we jump to the main talk. So before I come to APTs, all of you know the full form of APTs because it was also on the opening slide. Okay, but who can explain to me what is an APT? Anybody can explain to me what is an advanced persistent threat? See, now you know the thing is that some of you are consultants, some of you are in security, some of you are in audit. So all of whoever you might be, whatever your background might be, it's very important that we evangelize, correct? To management, to clients, whatever it might be. Part of evangelism is to throw jargon every now and then. So one of the key pieces of jargon that we all need to throw is APTs. Okay, so can somebody come up with a better explanation than that one? What do you mean by advanced persistent threats besides saying a threat which is persistent and advanced? Anybody can give me an example of something that has happened which constitutes an APT? Anybody knows an example? Sorry? Configure is actually not an example of APT. Configure is a pretty standard worm. Okay, that's the textbook definition of a worm, and you could even say it's the last traditional worm out there. Okay, any other examples of APT? What are the malware that have come after APT? What are some of the malware that have come after APT? Stuxnet. So what is the difference between Stuxnet and Configure? What makes Stuxnet bigger news than Configure? Why? What did that Stuxnet achieve which Configure could not? It was very targeted. Very good. First point, it was very precisely targeted. It was not spread to infect as many systems as possible. It was spread to attack very targeted systems. So that's the first, one of the key factors or criteria of what is an APT. What else? What was so again? It did not mass propagate because it was designed to. Yes, it was designed in a way, it had multiple mechanisms to avoid detection, and even if detected, to avoid peering into. Stuxnet, for example, was fully encrypted. Large parts of the critical code are encrypted, so that even if you want to reverse engineer, right, it's very difficult. The full Stuxnet analysis has still not been done. Okay, there are critical pieces of code of Stuxnet which have not been analyzed. Okay. Yes, very good. One of the key elements, worms also try to exploit 0 days, but APT attacks are definitely based on 0 days, right? 0 days is simply something for which a patch is not available, right? Actually, the most famous example of an APT besides Stuxnet is also RSA, right? Everybody knows RSA got hacked, right? Everybody knows that, okay? So how RSA, and we have partnered with them, so we're not dissing them, right? And it was very nice of them to actually come out with an entire blog post describing how they got hacked. So that's actually a very mature response for a company saying that, okay, this is what we did wrong, and so these are things that you need not do the same mistakes, right? And you know, in our business, we always start with a food slide. What does food stand for? Anybody knows food? Any consultants in the house? No? Fear, correct. Next?
Uncertainty.
Correct, very good. Fear, uncertainty and doubt. Okay, so you want to instill that to sort of make the marketing pitch. Actually, nowadays you don't need to do that. This was in the old days. Many years back you needed food. Now you don't need to do that, correct? Because already people are so aware of things that are happening that you don't have to educate them that there is a real and present danger, right? But we need to understand the nature of this danger, which is why the talk, right? We need to understand what is really happening at the ground level. So let's look at some examples. Flame and Stuxnet have spread, right? Gauss and Flame. Flame again was a very specific malware, okay, targeted at Iran's infrastructure again, okay. Gauss is again a very specific malware. It's a variant of a malware called ZS. So it's targeted at banks, right? Very targeted, very under the radar, using high-end techniques. 0 days, you know the price of a 0 day. If I find a security bug in Excel or in Internet Explorer, which Microsoft does not know about, I can sell it in the black market. Okay, there are people who will buy that. And you know what is the going price, the alleged going price for a 0 day vulnerability? Any guesses? It's up to $1 million. If you find a 0 day in a software which is very prevalent, which is typically a Microsoft software, okay, the price for selling that 0 day is $1 million. So this is another characteristic of APT, that it is a very well funded attack. It is not some guy who sat at home and said, let's write a virus for the heck of it. Okay, it's a very well funded, motivated, targeted attack. Okay. Some more examples. Finfisher was a spyware that was targeted specifically at those protesters who were protesting as part of the Arab Spring. Okay, it was targeted at them. I don't know how many of you know this, but Aramco suffered a very big attack about 2 weeks back, right? Of course, Aramco has not come out and made too many public statements, but they've said that they've been hit with a malware. There are rumors of what that malware has impacted them. Rumors are ranged from nothing much to saying that 30,000 systems of Aramco have been gone out of the network. Okay, so we don't know the facts yet, but this is what has happened. The same malware called Shamoon, the going name for Shamoon, has also impacted RasGas. Okay, so a malware written to attack oil and energy firms. Okay, so this is the sort of attacks that we are up against. It's no longer Configure, it's no longer those viruses, worms, Code Red, Nimda, you know, the usual, which you could actually fight against. Okay, now even if you have great antivirus, right, let's say all your systems are perfectly covered till the latest definition of the antivirus and you have perfect patching. So all your Microsoft software are patched, plus all non-Microsoft software also patched. So even your Adobe and Java and everything is patched. Still a 0 day is going to hit you. If a 0 day infects you, it's going to have an impact, right? So what does an organization do? What do auditors do to go beyond that? Okay. This is a diagram from RSS blog, and I'm not going to go into the details of it because you know you're welcome to read the blog, but I'll just tell you very quickly how RSA got attacked. One fine day in 2011, 12 employees of RSA received an email saying recruitment plan 2011. Now this, we are in the midst of a recession in the US, right? So what is the likelihood that people will double click on that attachment? Okay, that email did not come from some random email ID. Okay, that email came from a vendor of RSA, a partner of RSA. So RSA mail filters, spam filters are used to receiving emails from that particular mailbox. It's not out of the blue that something is cropped up. It's not even a spoofed email. That guy's mailbox hacked a mail with an Excel attachment sent to only 12 employees of RSA. Okay, RSA has probably, I don't know, 10,000, 15,000 employees, part of EMC now, much bigger. Okay, only 12 employees receive an email. Out of those 12, one guy opens up the email. Other 11, actually, it went into the junk mail folder for all 12. Okay, and 11 people deleted it from the junk mail. One person opened it up, and that Excel file contained a 0 day vulnerability. Okay, that 0 day vulnerability was in a very specific piece of Excel, which is very funny. Excel supports embedding of Adobe Flash files inside an Excel file. Why would you want to run Flash inside Excel? God only knows. But Excel has that capability. That's what was exploited, and a backdoor called Poison Ivy was installed. Poison Ivy is one of those very traditional backdoors. You know, when we were growing up, we used to hear about Sub7, Back Orifice, Poison. So it's a very well-known malware. They had tweaked this malware to avoid detection by the specific antivirus in use by RSA. So imagine the amount of groundwork that has gone into this. Okay, it's not something that is randomly hit RSA. Using this one single machine into which they had attacked, they had got compromised, they were then able to escalate their privileges over a period of a few days. Okay, over a period of a week, they were able to escalate their privileges and get access to RSA's seed servers, the servers where RSA's seed keys are stored. They compromised those, stole the seed keys, and thereby compromised the security of that token. Because you all know what RSA tokens, right? So that token number changes. Okay, but it changes in a synchronous fashion. It's also there on the server. So there is a root number based on which these keys are changing. Okay, depending on that number, the serial number of the token and your date and time. Okay, and that's how the verification happens. So if the root number is, the seed key is compromised, everything is gone. Anybody knows what happened after that? Anybody knows what was after they stole these keys? What happened next? Was that the end of the story? They sold it out. Okay, maybe they sold it, maybe they used it, but what did they use it for? Anybody knows that? They used it to attack the accounts of Lockheed Martin employees. Right? Anybody's heard of Lockheed Martin? What does Lockheed Martin do? It's one of the largest defense suppliers in the US, right? It makes warplanes and associated systems. So they use the RSA tokens, the compromised RSA tokens, to hack Lockheed Martin accounts. So imagine the magnitude of this attack. First one partner's email account hacked, then RSA's machine hacked, then from there so who was the eventual target? Right? The eventual target was not RSA, the eventual target was US defense suppliers. Correct? And so who could have been behind this attack? Who do you think is behind such an attack? Has to be a country. Either it's directly a government sponsoring this attack or it's a quasi-government attack.
Or maybe Lockheed's rivals.
Could be. Could be. So APTs are motivated by economic, financial, political gains. Okay, so it could be economic gain, it could be financial gain, it could also be political advantage or military advantage. Okay, Stuxnet. Who would be behind Stuxnet? Who could be behind Stuxnet? Sorry? It could. It's reputed or reported that it was Israel and the US that combined to launch a cyber war on Iran, of which Stuxnet was their major weapon, and it succeeded, right? So now a lot of us think, this doesn't happen in India. Yeah, we have this philosophy, it's not in my backyard. Abhi tak yahan to nahi hua hai, right? It's not an issue that has hit us yet. So you're wrong, okay? Because this sort of activity is actually happening here, okay? And we're taking an example of a company that came to us because they had been targeted by an attack of this nature. And the next few slides will get technical, but I want you to work with me on this, right? I'll try and explain what those screenshots are, because we actually did an analysis of that entire malware to show how these malware actually operate. Okay, what goes on? Why do we need to understand these things? Why do we need to understand the nitty-gritty of how a malware operates, or what does it do? Anybody can tell me, why do we need to understand this? So then you can design the right controls. If you understand the nature of the enemy, you understand the nature of its most potent weapon, then you can figure out that what we've been doing in our traditional audit mindset may not be sufficient anymore, because we are up against a wholly different sort of animal. Okay, so let's take a look at APTs in your backyard. So this story starts by a client which came to us and said that they've received 2 attachments which they feel are suspicious. Okay, the attachments were loop mobile bill statement date. It was a PDF file, apparently a PDF file, and a doc file, most wanted terrorist list by Delhi police. Okay, out of the blue they received these emails and they wanted us to do the analysis of what these files actually are. And it's very pertinent to understand what these files actually did. So what we did, we set up a secure environment in which we do this sort of analysis, and upon double clicking this file, you actually notice that it's 5 files within that. So it's not a PDF, it's a self-extracting exe. Okay. Now what happens in Windows is that you can choose an option to not show you the extension of known file types. Okay. Because of which this file was actually .pdf.exe, but that .exe is not shown. So it's a self-extracting exe. So if that user had double clicked on it, these 5 files would have gotten extracted. Okay. Now one of these is actually loop mobile bill statement date. You can see this, right? It has the icon of an Adobe document, but it's actually an exe. You see this? So it's very simple for a user to get tricked into double clicking this sort of a file. And then we actually have a PDF file which is just a dummy file. It's a 1 KB file, right? Okay. So that is the actual PDF file. This is the backdoor exe. And same with the doc as well. There is an exe file, services.exe, with the word icon, but it's not actually the word file. The word file is this one. This is the registry setting has also been changed to attach this icon to an exe. Okay, so the way the package has been sent, that the icon is attached along with the file itself. So you can embed the icon. So it's not actually the genuine Adobe icon. Okay, when I create an exe, the way I can create an exe is I can embed the .ico file, which is the icon that goes along with that file. Okay, so if an exe comes embedded with an ICO file, Windows will show me that icon. So it's not the original PDF icon, it's a slightly modified icon. Okay, That they have removed it, because if I gave you two ICO files which have the same icon, you'll end up maybe clicking the original one, whereas I want to tempt you into clicking this one. Okay, it's a psychological ploy. Okay. Now, what about the other files? If you see some of the other files over here, if you open those files up for analysis, look at what one of these batch files is doing. Can you see this? It's actually putting off my Windows firewall. And many of these APTs do that. They'll put off the firewall, they'll disable the antivirus. Okay, they'll try to disable the antivirus. Okay, antivirus settings are largely server controlled. So at the user end, it's not easy to disable an antivirus. Okay. And I'll tell you why it can actually disable it. Even the firewall disabling is not easy if you're running with normal user privileges. The minute you're running either with local administrator privileges, or this exe is executing under the umbrella of a high privileged exe, okay, like a Windows system exe, LSA, SS, or any of those exes. If it's running under that privilege level, then even your antivirus cannot block it, because your antivirus cannot play around with Windows system exes and DLLs. Okay, that's the key issue. A lot of people say, why does antivirus not work? Because these malware are written to execute with that privilege level. Okay, so an antivirus cannot even say, oh, this process cannot run, because the antivirus doesn't have jurisdiction at that level. At Windows, we call it the local system privilege level. It cannot mess around with a exe or DLL running at that privilege level. Okay, so that's what's happening. It sets off the firewall. It starts the notice.pdf. It opens up notice.pdf. So on the front end, you actually see the PDF. Okay, you feel that your loop mobile bill has opened up. But at the other end, the actual exe containing the malware has gotten started. Not only has it gotten started, but it is installed in my startup entry as well. Okay, so now every time the machine starts, this exe is going to be there. Now, what does this exe do? What is it up to? We submitted this services.exe to a site called virustotal.org. Virustotal.org scans any submitted file to about 40-45 antivirus companies, okay, products. So it scans that file for checking how many antivirus companies can actually pick up this file as a malware. Check out the results. Check out the results. Only 7 out of 43 antivirus companies have picked it up as a malware. Okay, whereas clearly the behavior of this exe is not above board, right? It is clearly a malware. So 7 out of 43 companies have picked it up. And which are those 7 companies? Check out this list. None of them are your major antivirus vendors. McAfee hasn't picked it up, Symantec hasn't picked it up, Trend Micro has not picked it up, no. And Kaspersky also has not picked it up. Okay, it's clearly a malware and your antivirus is not picking it up. Why? Why do you think your antivirus is not picking this up as a malware?
They might have thought about the security, about all those antivirus, the known antivirus.
Yes, and they don't even have to write a malware that avoids detection by 43 antiviruses. They have to code that malware to avoid detection by how many antiviruses?
5 or 6.
One, which you are using in your company. That's all.
If it is known as that, yes.
And how can it get known? How would you know which antivirus a particular company uses? Okay, very good question. You can look in the email header, it will say scanned by such and such, but that's your mail gateway virus, so that you come to know. What about the endpoint antivirus? It could be different.
Usually companies advertise saying that, go on like
Correct. In fact, it is a piece of cake to figure out which antivirus any company is using. It's a simple social engineering. One phone call to anybody in the IT team, right, offering a job, right, or interview by a magazine. There are multiple techniques. Just put your creative mind to it and easily you will come to know what is RSA's antivirus was known, right? That's why Poison Ivy was written in a way that evaded the signature that antivirus had for the malware. Okay, so they actually have to write the code only to evade your particular antivirus. Maybe 2, the one at the gateway and one at the endpoint, right? That's what he said. Look at the customer list, right? But sometimes people switch antiviruses also. So you'll find McAfee and Symantec both claiming a particular bank as their customer. Correct? So there are multiple ways in which you can figure it out. Okay, that is the least of your worries. Now what we find out is that once the machine is infected, it makes an HTTP connection to a particular server. Okay. Now here is the other thing. When we had the situation of bots and botnets and all these backdoors, they usually connected over a channel called IRC. The protocol that they used was IRC. Today IRC is not used. Why? Because most firewalls block it, but most firewalls may not block HTTP traffic, right? Outgoing HTTP traffic may not get blocked. So it's the most safe protocol to use to create a reverse connection back to what we call the command and control server, okay? And that's exactly what is happening. So one of the malware connects to this particular IP address, and the other malware connects to a different IP address, okay? These are the two IP addresses that they connect to. Next, if we look at the malware itself and we figure out what are the strings inside that malware, we find that it has these strings, password fox.exe. So that exe contains another exe, okay? My malware contains a embedded exe which is called password fox.exe. Can anybody guess what is password fox.exe? From the name, take a guess. Which passwords? Not really. Yes, every time you log into a site, your browser pops up a question, save the password, yes or no. Correct? Now those passwords are stored in the local database used by the browser. This exe is brilliant at cracking Firefox stored passwords. So it cracks the Firefox password store. That's its only job. And while preparing for this talk, I was just going through the data that we had collected as part of this analysis, and I found that we had actually downloaded all the data that this malware had been capturing, and I'll tell you how that happened also. But when I was going through all the gigabytes of data that this malware had been gathering from various infected machines, we found lots of text files containing actual passwords. And just to check one random account, there was a Facebook user ID password. I logged in, and a year later also the account was working. Now imagine if that account is for if the passwords are for corporate email or Gmail or net banking or any of these, okay? That's how these malware work, okay? So they don't leave any stone unturned. Next, what this guy was doing was, we actually did a whois to check who this IP address belongs to whom. So this was by Tata Communications. It was actually given to a hosting provider called DirectEye. It's a local hosting provider. But this does not mean that DirectEye was engaged in this hacking. It just means that the guy who did this attack had hosted his command server on a DirectEye IP address, okay? And privacy settings prevented, of course, figuring out who this domain name belonged to. That domain name, that IP address resolved to a domain name called heritage-society.com, right? Which if you looked at it in your SIM or you look, yeah, and then we checked out on the server itself, because we can see the path where this file is being uploaded. So you just go to that path, and the screenshot of our own machine is found over there. The screenshot of the machine on which we are doing analysis. So it's taking periodic screenshots. It's logging your keystrokes. It's sniffing the network traffic. It's trying to break your password. So imagine the amount of power that is there in one single malware, okay? We of course got a little more curious, and we said, let's find out what is the heritage that this society is protecting. So we checked out the server, and now I will skip over the part of how we got to the next part, which is we found out the files that are loaded on that server, and we started checking out these files. So for example, one of these files is a software called A-Miner. A-Miner is actually a product made by a security company in India. Okay, it's a, so this server either was hosting that company's data or that company was involved in such activity. Okay. Then if you see carefully, you find a file called appin.pdf. So if you check out that PDF file, my Kaspersky antivirus goes on alert. It says it's a known PDF exploit. Okay. Why write a PDF exploit versus an Excel exploit? What is the advantage of PDF based exploits? So is Excel or Word. No? So is Excel or Word or Office files. I mean, every company has MS Office installed. So why not write a backdoor that exploits something in Excel versus something in PDF? How many of your companies have patch management that covers non-Microsoft software, right? Whenever we look at patch management, whenever we do audits of patch management, we focus on, is Microsoft products covered, right? And a lot of people are in this mistaken assumption that PDF is secured. PDF cannot be backdoored. Whereas PDF is the largest rising percentage of file type containing malware today. Right? How many times in our home PCs we get an update that your Adobe Acrobat reader is out of, is not updated, click to update. And how many of us actually do that update versus saying remind me later, right? So we tend to think that PDF is secured at our home systems, and in our corporate setup, most of the investment is made in protecting Microsoft products, right? How many of us make sure that Java virtual machine, and it just had a major vulnerability discovered in it 2 weeks back. How many of our corporate organizations have Java virtual machine secured, right? So that's why PDF and these sorts of things are big ticket attack items. Also, other stuff that is found is fake YouTube and Gmail login pages. Do you see this? Now, as soon as I have opened up this page, I have got an alert. So what is this alert coming up over here? What is this alert coming up over here? And why is this alert coming up? It's a Kaspersky alert. It's saying that there is a backdoor.php, right? As soon as I opened up this file, it gave me an alert of this nature. Why? Any clues?
Some file came into the cache, which
This is files that are downloaded from that server. Huh? These are files from the heritagesociety.com server. So, what is this sort of an HTML file designed to do? Why have they coded this file? What does this file do? So, it's a phishing page, right, for Gmail account, simple. But then why is my antivirus going crazy? There is nothing malware with building a page like this, right? There's nothing illegal with it. No, this is called a drop-by download. Okay, drive-by download. You know Google got hacked in China? This is exactly how Google got hacked in China. One of the Google employees clicked on a link, and that link took him to a site which downloaded the malware onto his machine. Okay, this is a malware download, drive-by download. Okay, so if your browser is not patched, again, how many of us focus on patching browsers, right? If your browser is not patched, again the malware could have gotten downloaded and automatically infected your machine. Okay, so they are not leaving any stone unturned. They are not leaving any channel of possible infection unturned. Okay, and there are various other delivery mechanisms. You know, it's not that complicated to get malware on an end user's system. And some of these techniques which I am showing you are social engineering techniques, right? In fact, all audits should do a social engineering attack at least once a year. As part of your pen testing, you should get social engineering officially done. Okay, build a list of scenarios and actually get it executed. You'll be shocked at the results you get. Okay, so here is one case of shoulder surfing. Okay, it's an authorized attack, right? And what we are doing, we don't even have to look at, you know, figure out what is the password the guy is typing. So this attack was very simple, where you just send one of your good looking auditors, right, preferably female. I'm not being an MCP, but just saying. And then you just, so for example, she poses as a student, I'm here to do a research project on blah, 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 whatever. And then the people say, yeah, we'll come show you how we leverage technology and this and that and the other, right? So people are still always going to be the weakest link, but these, and this sort of story is not to blame anybody specific, but to raise, in fact, we say security awareness, we should change that line. We should say security alertness, because everybody is aware, but are people alert enough to take the right action when the time comes? Okay. Baiting, if I gifted you a USB drive, if I sent to your home a nicely packaged courier with an, you know, 32 GB USB drive, how many of you would say look suspicious versus how many of you would say, Arey, let's start using it? Correct? It could come auto infected, right, in the auto run. This is another attack. You are all aware of phishing attacks. A variation of phishing is called as spear phishing, right? What is spear phishing? Anybody can tell me what is spear phishing? Exactly. In a spear phishing attack, which we again carried out in one particular instance, we sent about 40 employees of the company an email saying that, you know, we really value your contribution to the organization and we want to know, you know, what your feedback is for the company. And please click on this link to log in. That email went from a Gmail ID in the name of their head of HR. How many out of 40 do you think clicked on that link? How many people clicked on the link and landed on this login page? You're right, almost everybody clicked on it. Okay, and this page is a fake domain registered with only one letter different from the company's domain. Okay, how many people entered their username password over here? How many do you think entered their username password here? Sorry? Everybody. So, who logged on to this page? No, actually we shouldn't be that pessimistic about people and ourselves. We should trust a little bit about human nature. So actually 10 people entered their username.